This morning, I'm going to be talking about faith. But before I do, there's some other things I would like to talk about. For example, today is the winter solstice. It is also the new moon of Capricorn, so we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And then I'll move into the theme of this morning's talk, which is faith. It is said that Christ is on the way back to the world of humanity. And why is that? It's something we want to think about. You know, it's just a common conversation where people talk about the reappearance of the Christ, and that Christ is going to come back to humanity, but we want to ask ourselves why. And when you see the answer, I think we'll all recognize that the need is here. That when Christ comes back to humanity, it's going to be to renew our hearts with greater hope, a greater faith, and a greater love. So hope and faith and love. What I'd like to think, perhaps it's too abstract for some people, but I'd like to think that we are all instruments of the Christ. We are preparing the way for his return. And if that is so, and I believe it in my heart that this is so, then the question is, how do we prepare the way for his return? And it is to give greater hope to your friends, to your family members, to your co-workers, even to your boss at work. To give greater faith. The media today is so loud, it is so noisy with negativity and terror and fear and doom and gloom. It's outrageous. And we see people falling into the trap of thinking doom and gloom and why care and why love and why this and that. We see people so buried in materialism that they don't even think about Christ and the light of Christ today. All they think about is their problems and their sorrow and the negativity and the noise of the media. So what better time than to remind ourselves at Christmas that we're going to give birth to the Christ within so that we can prepare the way and we can give greater hope, greater faith, and greater love. So if you remember nothing else other than that this morning, in our talk this morning, think about that. And this is, in our meditation, and I said, Christ asks us this question, what are you doing for me? Here's 3 answers. We're giving greater hope, greater faith, and greater love. And then we have to work that out, how we're going to do that. So this morning I will be sharing some esoteric facts about the winter solstice, which is today. Then I'll talk about Christmas and giving birth to the Christ within and faith. At the close of our time together this morning, we will celebrate Holy Communion, and you're all invited to participate. Our time together this morning will last maybe 15 minutes longer than normal because we have more things to experience than what we normally do on Sundays. So today is December 21st and the winter solstice. This is a very important event, whether you even know it or not. It is. You can argue with it that, oh, that's pagan, or you can be wise in the esoteric tradition, which means the tradition that will unfold and eventually become exoteric. And realize that the winter solstice is a time that is often called Holy Night. Winter solstice, Holy Night. The ancient mysteries tell us that according to the plan of the ages, that the Christ Mass should be celebrated on the holy night of the winter solstice, when Jesus, the Lord of love, descended on earth to bring mankind to the new Christ mystery, wherein humanity is shown how to develop within himself this living tree of life. It was shown how to impress upon his body, through service and love, the golden symbols of the babe, which the three wise men and women read about this morning, those symbols, golden symbols of the babe. It was of the same mystery that St. Paul spoke when he said, I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus. He was referring to the signs of the tree of light and its starry ornaments, lighted within his aura by the risen Christ, whom he met on the way to Damascus. This was St. Paul. Now, the winter solstice is a time to be born anew, so that's today. That's today. It is at this time that the planet is given a spiritual impulse that adds to its light and strengthens the love principle in the heart of humanity. The winter solstice was observed in Rome as a feast of Saturn, with a mystic marriage, dramatizing the marriage of the earth and the sun, representing the new birth or initiation. In Egypt, the winter solstice was celebrated with state ceremonials in homage to the Divine Mother, Isis, and her newborn son, Horus. They chanted, "The Virgin has brought forth, the light is waxing." Holy Night in Greece was greeted by songs in the key of Capricorn to the accompaniment of a flute. Excuse me. At a certain time, neophytes descended with lighted torches to an underground chapel and paid reverence to the image of the babe, whose brow was a shining cross of gold. So today, as I mentioned, is not only the winter solstice, but also the new moon of Capricorn. The exact time of the winter solstice today, Mountain Standard Time, is 6:03 p.m. this evening, and the new moon is just a few minutes after that at 6:37. Christmas every year, Christmas time every year is always a vital time. But this year and in the coming years, it will be even more vital, I believe. For Christmas time is now the time of transformation. It is a very serious time where our inner illumination, where our inner giant, the Christ, must take birth and eventually transfigure our personality. In a few years' time, or a few decades, or maybe even a few lifetimes, you will really actualize the manifestation of that spark that is within each of us. My intention today is to encourage, to challenge the fire that is within you, so that eventually you really feel that spark. And you'll see that that spark will start to revive within you and seek to manifest itself. My wish is that we hold together as sisters and brothers and strive the best we can so we do not remain the level where we are now. This is the whole meaning of Christmas to me, as stated in the teaching. Christmas is really a time to sanctify yourself, to raise yourself above the level where you are, and to touch a new level of consciousness. This is why in the White Mountain Group we have been studying 3 volumes of a book called Adventures in Consciousness. It's to help us change and move into a new level of consciousness. So today is really the day to think about this and take advantage of this energy, free energy. You don't have to have a charge card or a debit card. You don't have to put it on layaway. This is free energy that you can use any way you want. But the best way to use it is to sanctify yourself, to raise yourself above the level where you are, and to touch a new level of consciousness. In a verse by the Master Morya, a great sage, he says, "Wayfarer, friend, let us travel together." And he means as animals, as man, as angels, even as cats and dogs, that we are going to travel together. Do you feel the power of it? Let us travel as a group together, as a nation together, as one humanity together. Togetherness is so beautiful. So do not create divisions, or you will be traveling by yourself. Do not create cleavages between you, or you cannot help one another. Now that was the introduction. Okay, so now we're going to talk about faith the rest of the time this morning, and then we'll have and celebrate Holy Communion. We are told that it is from the center of love that all saviors throughout the ages and all countries went forth, taking with them the message of compassion, the message of beauty and service and sacrifice, of simplicity and even fearlessness. Alice Bailey, this great spiritual teacher, said in The Externalization of the Hierarchy, a book, one of the books she wrote, the point of decision, as it is called, in all hierarchical circles was reached during the period between the full moon of June 1936 and the full moon of June 1945. The point of decision resulted in the decision by the Christ to reappear or return to a visible presence on earth as soon as possible, and considerably earlier than had been planned. So again, think about being a forerunner, preparing the way, giving greater hope, greater faith, and greater love to all you touch and to all that you are responsible to. In The Reappearance of the Christ, the book, Alice Bailey said this decision was necessarily made in consultation with the Lord of the world, known as the Ancient of Days. To have faith means to have belief. Belief in something greater than today. Greater than today. Greater than yesterday and greater than tomorrow. To have faith means to have an unshakable belief in something. a belief that no earthquake, no flood, no crises, no loss can remove from you. I was thinking about a story I recently heard, if I can remember the whole story, at least the good part of it. There was a young man, he was in his mid-30s, had been diagnosed with cancer, and he fell extremely ill. He lived with his mother in a village, far from anybody, and out in the country. And so he was in terrible pain. He was in bed, suffering greatly. He knew that, any day now he would pass. So he would pray. He didn't pray for God to restore his life. And that was what was interesting to me. He just prayed that someone would come and be with him and pray with him. He felt he needed help, for God to hear him, to make his passing easier. Now keep in mind, they lived in this very remote area and in a village. This took place about 35 years ago. And one day this young woman had a dream, woke up from the dream, and she was told to go to this house in this village, that someone needed her help. She was a simple woman of prayer. So she went to the house and knocked on the door, and Mom answered, and she said, yes, can I help you? And nobody stops by to visit, it's so remote. And the woman said, well, I know this sounds crazy. I don't know why I'm here, but I have a sense there is someone here that needs my help. So the mother started weeping and said, I think you're here to help my son who is passing. He's going to die any minute and has cancer and has been suffering for quite some time. So the woman went back into the bedroom and just looked at the young man, and she said, let us pray. And so for 15, 20, 25 minutes they prayed, whatever God had in store for him, to let it manifest. And then she left. And the next day he started getting better. And then the next day he was even better. And each day his energy was restored, his life was restored, and he is alive today. That is faith. That is faith. So I'm going to repeat this. To have faith means to have belief. Belief in something greater than today. See, we are losing our faith because we are identifying with form. It is my wish for all of us today that our faith supersedes form. Faith is found in the beauty of one's heart. Rabindranath Tagore, I always have trouble pronouncing his first name, Rabindranath Tagore, said, faith is a bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. We often hear the phrase blind faith. Faith, according to popular thinking, implies a perpetual state of blindness, of not knowing or comprehending, or groping in the dark, floating in a groundless, unreal way of belief. It is therefore very important for us to differentiate between the false concept of faith and the real concept of faith. There's a saying, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Our heart is a sanctuary where the Lord of the world dwells in all his glory. Now think about that. If you have that knowledge, if you have that faith, if you truly believe that the Lord dwells in your heart in all His glory, then why do you have disbelief of anything? Unless you think the Lord is as common as you are, as we are, as I am. See, the world has us so enslaved to negative, derogative thinking. Oh, I'm never going to get married. I'm always going to live in this little dingy, little rented apartment. You know, I'm always going to have a car that's falling apart. As I get older, I'm going to get sicker and sicker. My bones are going to break. I'm going to get dementia and maybe Alzheimer's. And then what's going to happen to me? I have no money to stay in a nursing home. This is what the world is teaching us. And we believe it. Then we have no faith. How can we think in such negative terms if we believe that we are a spark of the Most High? No one on this planet is greater than the Lord, who has powers beyond a meager human being. See, this is not only faith, but it is living your faith. Like that young man whose need brought a woman of faith into his little home. And he is alive today. When all the doctors said, you're done for. You know, put your affairs in order. If you feel that the Most High exists within your heart, you will start living a life of faith. You will start living a life of beauty, of light, of love, and power. For such a life is not made of masks. It is not made of fear or artificiality or pseudo-images. The one of faith, like that little sweet woman, is a messenger of the great ones. So every year at Christmas, we celebrate the birth of Christ, the great flame. This is our legacy, a reminder that each of us is, in essence, a living flame, a spark of God. In that knowledge, we celebrate the next coming. It doesn't make any difference whether it's tomorrow or 5,000 years from now. We are forerunners of the Christ to give greater hope, greater faith, and greater love. This makes you what? This makes you an extraordinary person. See, now the world has us believe that humility is that you kowtow to people, that you're worthless, that you were born in sin, and you should walk with your head down, looking at the dirt. But that's not who we are. So you need to start seeing yourself, if you're not already, as an exceptional human being, as a messenger of the great ones, as a forerunner, as being an instrument of the Lord, of hierarchy, of master. Do you have faith? Do you have a deep faith in the divine power? If you do, you have faith in invisible powers. For to you these powers are not invisible, but rather visible. For you see how divinity works in the world of mankind. You see life through your heart. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Pope John Paul II said, faith leads us beyond ourselves. It leads us directly to God. If you have a closed heart, you will not have faith. If your mind rules your heart, you will not have faith. Martin Luther King said, faith is the opening of all sides and at every level of one's life to the divine inflow. Man who is all mind will rely only on historical fact. Seeing is believing. I'm from Missouri. Right. I'm not. But it's the axiom. Do you have faith? Really have faith? If you do, you know that faith moves mountains. It means you don't have to stay where you are right now. In your emotions, in your body, in your knowledge. Christ was known for his healing powers. One day he heard someone say, "Thank you for healing me." Christ looked at him and said, "Your faith healed you." Do you need healing? Physical healing, emotional healing, mental healing, spiritual healing. To be healed, you must have faith. In the book 100 Names of God by Torkim Serdarian, it reads, faithfulness means you live in him, you think in him, you feel in him, you act in him. He is your innermost self. I remember when I went in to Torkim's office one day, and we were in there together talking for about an hour and a half. It's an exceptional time. And as I was getting to leave, because we had talked about all the sorrows and challenges and joys and exceptions that took place, in sharing the teachings with other people. And he said, two things he said. For you to stay in this field, you need to surround yourself with a handful of loving people that will love you no matter what and support you no matter what. And the other things that he said was, all that you are doing is for the Lord. Remember that. See, and most people think, I'm doing this for myself. But that's not the principle of life. If we are living the principle of life, then that life is a principle for mankind. So if what I do is in service to the Lord, that means all that we are and can be and will be is the result of serving the Lord, not serving ourselves. So here are some points. Excuse me. I'm going to have a little drink of water. I hope this is fresh. It is, okay. What prevents us from having faith? A lack of contact with beauty and light and the love of Christ. A lack of belief in the return of Christ. A lack of belief in the hierarchy, the kingdom of God. A lack of beauty in your life. A lack of love and joy and creativity in your life. a lack of blessing in your life. You know, for example, some people say it's so hard to get here on Sunday mornings, or it's so hard to meditate, or it's so hard to study. I don't have the time to do it. But to come here on Sundays is a blessing, because this sanctuary is a blessing. This blessing is the result of many, many people who were in service to the Lord, working. You cannot imagine all the people that dedicated their lives to distribute the teaching and to live the teaching, knowing that someday we would have a sanctuary. 30 years it took, waiting for God's timing, the right time. And here it is. And now some people are saying, you know, I just can't get there. You know, I work 6 days a week. You know, I need Sundays off to sleep. Look at the message. You know, bring yourself into the sanctuary where you're going to be blessed, where we are going to be blessed today. For those who are watching the YouTube today or the webinar today, you are being blessed. This is a time the Most High God is watching over you, saying if you can take an hour or an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, out of your busy, mundane life, I'm going to bless you. And then we're going to take this blessing, not personally or selfishly, but we're going to give this blessing out as pioneers, giving greater hope, greater faith, and greater love to all those whose lives we touch. Now, sometimes those lives we touch, when you try to give them hope, they think you have an ulterior motive, that you're working against them. That's just their darkness. They don't know how to receive hope. They don't know how to receive love unconditionally. They don't know what faith is yet, but you're going to be with them day in and day out, and you're going to be a constant. And someday they are going to wake up and see the blessings that God, through you, is giving to them. And then they will no longer be lacking blessing. They'll no longer be lacking beauty, and so forth. People who are lacking in faith have placed their beliefs in the material rather than in the spiritual side of life. In money, in objects, in the intellect, in degrees and diplomas, in professional positions, and this and that, all things which are of a very transient nature. Faith supersedes the material, always. Though it can also permeate, and this is what's very cool to remember, faith can also permeate the material form. People lose all their money and they become faithless. They lose their minds and they become faithless. They lose their degreed paying jobs and lose their faith in life. Their husband or wife leaves them and they lose their faith in life. Say, well, I deserved it. I'm worthless. Do you really think God gave birth to you, that you are a spark of the Most High God to punish you? It just doesn't make sense. You know, we are here to experience the joy of light and love and beauty. What is most interesting to me is that oftentimes as a person is experiencing loss, if there is any kind of element of faith in his heart, it will draw someone into his life which increases that kernel of faith. If not, then in time he will become cold-hearted and oftentimes agnostic or an atheist. Well, here's another story. It's similar to the one I said a little earlier, but it's nice to hear. You want another story? Even though, well, we're maybe a couple more minutes later. Of course. A few weeks ago, a young man called to tell me his sister's husband was in the last few hours of life. A 35-year-old man with cancer. The sister was angry, afraid, and apparently faithless. As the brother and I talked, he was afraid that his sister, because of all the drugs in the house, would take her life, for she had a history of suicide. As we continued to talk, he told me a story about a neighbor whose 15-year-old daughter had survived bone cancer. The neighbor found faith in the faith of his friends. When his daughter survived, he vowed he would help anyone he could who was in a similar crisis. The neighbor had moved to Michigan and now lives only 1 block from this boy's sister. Thursday, the man went to the sister's home and asked if he could spend some time with her and the husband. At first, the sister refused, but the man was not going to give up. Finally, the sister invited him in. See the similarity? Praying for her husband and trying to ignite the kernel of faith in the sister's heart. I heard this story. When I heard this story, I knew his sister was going to be fine. For an angel in disguise found his way to his sister's home. She will be all right through this most faithful man. The woman's faith is going to be ignited from the seed of faith in her heart. When you compose a poem of beauty, that beauty remains with you and gives you faith in the spiritual power of beauty. When you compose music heard in the higher worlds, the language of the higher worlds will remain with you, giving you faith in the higher worlds. When you commune with God in all His glory, you have faith in the continuity and immortality of life. Faith is a word, but the power of faith is beyond words. It is an experience. It is knowingness. It is beingness. When we read the teachings that it is said that Christ is on the way back to the world of humanity to renew our hearts, a greater hope, a greater faith, a greater love, those who gave birth to Christ within their hearts know He will return. This is faith. To have faith means you know He will never forsake you, no matter what happens. To have faith means you know He will never betray you. Remember, Pope John Paul said faith leads us beyond ourselves. It leads us directly to God. Faith is important for all religions. Some people say if we believe in God and it turns out that He doesn't exist, we'll be safe. And if He doesn't, we won't have lost anything. Some people speak of a leap of faith, like a child jumping off the table into the arms of his father. The child is not 100% sure his father will catch him, but he has enough faith to jump. In Agni Yoga, our faith is concrete. It is formed by giving birth to the flame within our heart, the Christ within. It is not blind, and it is not a leap. Faith for the Agni Yogi, for the student of ageless wisdom, is active. Faith is active. Faith is a knowingness that you live in Him. You think in Him. You feel in Him. You act in Him. He is your innermost self. This is our refuge, our faith. And from this refuge springs beauty and joy and freedom and many other things. When you are confused or angry or lost, if you practice these principles, you are going to find your faith and live your faith. It will keep you going through the dark days and nights of your life. When you breathe in beauty and exhale beauty, faith is not blind. When you give forgiveness and ask for forgiveness, faith is not blind. When you give gratitude and receive gratitude, faith is not blind. Christ was born over 2,000 years ago, we are told, but those who have faith continue to celebrate His birth. What He gave to the world continues to live in our hearts and minds today. It is our faith that causes us to yearly celebrate the birth of Christ. As you celebrate the birth of Christ each year, you will also yearly celebrate your own birth, for we are all born of the Most High. Faith gives us confidence. Self-confident people have a deep faith in the divine, in the invisible powers, because their contact with their inner divinity is magnetic to divine help. And this is why we say, have faith. Merry Christmas. We're going to celebrate the Holy Communion now, so let me share a little bit about communion. This is from the Teachings of Christ book, Volume 1. It reads, "There is a very old church in Jerusalem where Torquem, as a young boy, was studying. They held a beautiful liturgy. About 60 people were singing together. We were all in heaven," he wrote. "Suddenly, the priest came forth to give Holy Communion, while a deacon stood and said, 'Here is the mystery. No one must approach the holy mystery unless he has faith. Unless his mouth is clean, his thoughts are pure. Unless his body is used for righteousness.' He continued by chanting, 'Those who cannot approach the body of Christ, let them leave the temple.' In olden times, those who did not believe in Holy Communion would leave the temple at that moment, so that Holy Communion was served in a pure atmosphere of faith. Once, he said, when I was taking Holy Communion, I made a vow. From now on, I'm going to do my best not to lie. I am going to serve, and I'm going to love people. I am no longer going to escape class to climb trees." I had a habit of running away from class to climb trees. Sitting at the top was so much fun. But now, he wrote, "I'm not going to do these things any longer, I promise, so that I graduate from the school of life with great honor." Before you come up this morning to take Holy Communion, spend some time in silence. In this silence, we make firm decisions to improve our life and strive toward more beauty, goodness, righteousness, joy, and freedom. We must also promise our inner Lord that we will abstain from certain practices that we know are not good for us. We must decide to study more, to meditate more, and to serve more through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. When you receive the host during Holy Communion, accept it as the fiery body of Christ, as his life. Let his life penetrate into all corners of your being. Visualize yourself being transformed.